We have been asking ourselves for nearly a year, what happened to Melissa Casillas? A gunshot wound, a bullet passed through her skull, a firearm even found nearby, but here is the kicker. The medical examiner won't say if this was a murder, an accident, or something else. The official autopsy report has just been released, and we are going to break it all down for you right now. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber.
Quote, the remains received on June 24, 2026 included the shafts of the left radius and ulna, shafts of 2 metacarpals, and a few small bone fragments. That is not fiction. That is an official New Mexico office of the Medical Investigator evidence receipt. It documents what a grieving family recovered from a crime scene weeks after state police declared it cleared. Imagine detectives handing a victim's mother the key to a sealed room and saying, "We're done." She walks inside and finds her daughter's bones still on the floor. That is the institutional failure we are now examining. Before we go deeper, subscribe to Trial Theory Unsealed. We don't just cover the story, we follow the evidence. June 26, 2025. Melissa Casillas vanishes.
Remember, we previously discussed the mysterious circumstances surrounding the death of Melissa Casillas, a wife, a mother, 54-year-old administrative assistant at one of the world's most sensitive national security labs, Los Alamos National Laboratory. She vanished in June of 2025, and almost a year later, hiker found her remains in a remote, desolate area of the Carson National Forest. And now, finally, the autopsy report has been released. A gunshot wound to the head, a bullet that traveled right through her skull, and a firearm found near her body. But this is where it gets complicated. The medical examiner has ruled her manner of death undetermined. So, not homicide, not by her own means, not an accident. I mean, at least for sure, it's undetermined. We don't know. That's about to open up a whole new chapter in this case because Melissa's family, they're not accepting this. They believe that she was killed. And they have evidence that they found that law enforcement apparently didn't find, which we're going to get into a little bit. But what does the autopsy actually tell us? And that's what we're going to get into.
She is a 54-year-old administrative assistant at Los Alamos National Laboratory, a fortress of nuclear secrets. Her husband says she dropped him at work, then planned to complete a task at another lab building.
Right from the start, according to NBC News, her husband, Mark Casillas, who also worked at the lab, apparently told investigators that she dropped him off at the lab that morning and said that she was going to another location within the lab to complete a work task. The problem is, she apparently never made it there. Instead, she reportedly returned home after realizing she had forgotten her badge. Her daughter saw her that morning at around 7:45 a.m. Later that day, family members went to the house, found her purse, identification, cell phone still there. This is according to New Mexico State Police. And here's the thing that really stood out. 2 of her phones had reportedly been factory reset, meaning they were wiped. That same afternoon, June 26, 2025, a family acquaintance spotted Melissa walking eastbound on State Road 518. This was captured on security video from a local business. And that, as far as we know, was the last confirmed sighting of her. New Mexico State Police PIO Sergeant Ricardo Bracetta told Dateline she is observed walking eastbound on NM 518 and wearing the clothing she was last reported wearing in the Taos Plaza. It is difficult to tell if she appears distressed. And then nothing. For nearly a year. No answers. The family searched, volunteers searched, law enforcement searched. Melissa, nowhere to be found.
She never arrives. Instead, she returns home. Her daughter sees her at 7:45 a.m. later. Her purse, ID, and cell phone are found inside the house. 2 phones, factory reset, wiped clean. That afternoon, security footage captures her walking eastbound on State Road 518. Then nothing for nearly a year. May 28, 2026. A hiker pauses to enjoy a mountain view in the Carson National Forest. He looks down and sees human bones on a rocky outcrop. A handgun lies nearby. Dental records confirm the remains belong to Melissa Casillas.
You fast forward, you go to May 28th of this year. A hiker discovered human remains in the McGaffey Ridge area of the Carson National Forest. And according to New Mexico State Police, a handgun was found alongside those remains, which were skeletonized. the Office of the Medical Investigator positively identified the remains as that of Melissa Casillas via dental records. Now, you may remember in our last episode, we talked about some really troubling new developments. According to LA Magazine, the Casillas family hired their own search team who headed back to that remote area where her remains were found. And according to their attorney, they discovered items that had never been mentioned before. And this really stood out. Melissa's sister reportedly recognized her handwriting in these shredded papers that were found. So the question becomes, how was this evidence not uncovered sooner? What does it mean for the investigation? But now we have the autopsy report, and I want to break...
The autopsy report delivers one devastating word: undetermined. Not homicide, not suicide, not accident. A question mark where an answer should be.
Listen, there's a lot that just doesn't make sense about this case. And, the positioning of the body, the location of the body. From what I understand, this is an extremely, extremely remote area of the park where it is not like right off the road. So supposedly one of her last sightings of this woman was seen walking on the New Mexico roads there, and she had a backpack. And then all of a sudden she's now found in this remote area. I understand that she was an experienced hiker, experienced hunter, but it's still just, there's so many questions. And that's the problem right there. When there's so many questions, that lack of filling in the blanks leads to other questions, conspiracy theories. So, and the fact that there are other missing scientists from the area and the government, there's just a lot of questions that I have surrounding this.
Does it make you think that it's possible someone dropped off her remains, that she was killed or died somewhere else, and that the remains were transported there and left there? Because that's a theory that's come up.
Listen, at this point, like I've said before with you, like as a good case agent, you never say this is not possible. You can't say this isn't going to. So anything is possible as far as whether somebody brought her. But based on how it's described that you just read, it seems like she was sat up there in this position, not her body dumped. If somebody
the family refuses to accept this void, they hire their own search team. That team walks onto the exact same Ridge State Police already processed and released. What do they find? Cervical vertebrae, her left foot, shredded paper in her handwriting, hair, clothing with apparent bloodstains. They left her body parts behind. That phrase must repeat. They left her body parts behind.
The investigators, from what we've understood, the initial evidence response team left a lot of evidence behind, which was discovered by a private investigator, and then they turned that additional evidence over. So it seems to me that the team, the crime scene, team that came out from New Mexico State Police really didn't do a good job. So it also tends me to believe that maybe they didn't look and see if there was somebody who tracked it in. I know it's been over a year, but still there could be physical evidence that the individual leaves when bringing in a body. So to answer your question in a long way, I think that she probably died there, in that place, and either whether she was killed or suicide.
Let's get into it a little bit more. So here's what they found when they got there. Quote, the skeletal remains.
The private investigator delivers those bones to authorities in an infant body bag, and the chain of custody form becomes its own indictment. Now consider the parallel reality. Los Alamos is not an office park. It is the birthplace of the atomic bomb. Employees hold Q clearances. Foreign intelligence services actively target this facility. Melissa worked there. Her husband worked there. 2 phones were wiped the day she disappeared. So ask the unavoidable question. What was on those devices that someone needed to erase before anyone could look? Here is the ticking clock. If her death connects to her employment at a nuclear laboratory, then every day this is treated as undetermined is another day a potential national security breach walks free. Who benefits from an investigation so incomplete that a bereaved family becomes its own evidence recovery unit? Now the forensics. The autopsy describes a gunshot entering the cranial base from the right side, traveling upward, exiting through the temporal bone.
The fact that the gun is still there, again, that's great, but without the projectile, which apparently was not located in her skull. So where is the projectile? So this is where the investigators should have gone back out there and tested and gone and conducted a grid search. Listen, you're looking for a small single round. It's going to be very difficult to find it, but at least that would be able to match the bullet to the gun. Without that bullet, without that without the round, you can't say that gun was the murder weapon or the suicide weapon, or however you want to call it. But again, those are all parts of the test that hopefully New Mexico State Police is doing.
Let's get to what everybody's been waiting for, right? The actual cause of death. So here's what the report says about the trauma. Quote, there was projectile trauma to the cranium. The projectile entered the cranial base from the right side, damaging the left anterior side of C1 and the left side of the foramen magnum. The angle of entry was from right to left, inferior to superior, and slightly posterior to anterior. The projectile passed through the left petrous portion and exited the cranium through the squamous portion of the temporal bone. Okay, can you walk us through?
A former FBI case agent reviewing this trajectory stated plainly, this is not a normal path for a self-inflicted wound. People ending their own lives do not angle a firearm behind their ear upward through the spine.
Trying to be, if someone is suicidal, someone wants to take their life, and they're conducting a self-inflicted gunshot wound, what is the two most likely that you're going to see? Either put it in under your chin, in your mouth, or sometimes your forehead. I think that this angle is awkward enough to me to saying, listen, this is where I conduct my investigations. I conduct my investigations as to looking at all possibilities, but the most likely is the direction I'm going. This right here is not a normal path for a self-inflicted gunshot wound. It wouldn't be normal. Is it impossible? No, it's not impossible. But for me, so then I would be leaning in the direction of that this is a homicide because of the direction of travel, the entry, the movement of the bullet. Again, someone will be committing suicide. They're just distraught. All they're going to do is put it under their chin like they see in the movies or they read in the books. So those are the things that would be most likely. If I saw the round here or if I saw the round here in my head, then I'd be like, okay, that would lead me in that direction. But this right here, the description of how the bullet entry and exited, hitting part of C1, the upper spine, I think this all would lead me as the investigator in the direction of that this would be, appears to be a homicide, that someone killed her. And then that would begin the reasoning as to why. So we need to figure out motives, who is likely. You have family, co-workers, things that maybe it was a random individual and she was just sitting there, lying there, and a random individual came up and randomly killed her. That's even a possibility there. But then you would say, okay, why is the gun there? Would a killer really be that? So there's lots of questions, and with the failure of answers to these
But
questions.
The projectile was never recovered. Without it, the weapon cannot be matched to the bullet, and the state police never conducted a grid search wide enough to find it. The family's team did what the state would not. They left her body parts behind. The firearm was reportedly registered to Melissa's husband.
Was reportedly registered to Melissa Casillas' husband, Mark Casillas. This is according to the Crime Junkie podcast. Los Angeles Magazine, they reached out to authorities to confirm that. And I also want to make one other thing clear. So Melissa Casillas' paternal side of the family, they issued a statement. They don't believe that she died by her own hand. They basically said, we want to make something very clear. The Mondragon family and Melissa's closest friends do not believe Melissa took her own life. Those who knew and loved Melissa know how deeply she loved her daughter. From the very beginning, her family has maintained that Melissa would not willingly leave her daughter behind. You made a great point, right? The idea of how do we trust this investigation moving forward? Where should it?
Toxicology on degraded brain tissue returned a preliminary marijuana indication, never confirmed. And then the family statement that should echo through every briefing room in this country. Melissa would not willingly leave her daughter behind. That is not sentiment. That is behavioral evidence.
And I want to read one more piece from the report about what was actually found, and we can try to make sense of it. Quote, the remains received on June 24th, 2026, included the shafts of the left radius and ulna, shafts of 2 metacarpals, and a few small bone fragments. The remains recovered on July 2nd, 2026 included cervical vertebrae 2 to 5 and much of the left foot. Wow. And we also know that the family's attorney, that there was shredded paper, hair, clothing with possible blood, all of that recovered seemingly by the family's private search team.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying is this is not just that piece of paper. There was physical evidence, bones. There was biological evidence, blood-stained clothing. There was clothing that could have gunshot residue on it. Could, to show that, whether it was a piece of clothing on her leg that, will show gunshot residue. Everything is part of the picture that those investigators want to paint of that scene. Everything is part of the scene. And there's nothing that should have been discounted, especially bones, especially her body. Like I said, the trauma that her family must have suffered, seeing that there was still parts of her body left behind. And I would be unbelievably incensed at the New Mexico law enforcement authorities that conducted the search. I'd be furious as a family member, but then also as an experienced case agent, I would be furious at them for failing to collect all the evidence and taking their time to properly do it, and that my team was required to. So
when you combine a bullet trajectory inconsistent with suicide, a scene so poorly processed that private citizens recovered human remains weeks later, and 2 phones wiped on the day of a disappearance, you are no longer looking at an undetermined death.
So supposedly her cell phones were completely wiped clean of all data, all information, which their family says that's not normal. And we all live and die by our phones these days. Why would her cell phone be, erased? Why would she do that? So there's a lot of questions. This isn't just like she went out for a hike and either killed herself or was killed. There's more to it. The fact that her phone...
Do you think this puts pressure on them to continue the investigation? Should they make a formal announcement? We're continuing this investigation. I feel like they have to, given how much attention
there's too many. Listen, if you have just the body, again, that would be suspicious to me. I would have moving forward. The fact that you have the additional suspicion of the phones being wiped, her being seen walking on the road, not in her normal, day-to-day life that she would. Something happened where it deviated, whether she was told to deviate or she self-deviated. There's something there, which means is without those clear answers, the law enforcement entities cannot say definitively that it was suicide. They have to go in the assumption this is possibly a homicide. And that's absolutely the way they should be moving forward.
Unbelievable. Yeah, it's hard to make sense of this. Daniel Bruner, thank you so much for coming on. I was looking forward to having the opportunity to break down this report with you to try to make sense of it. Always appreciate your insight.
My pleasure. Anytime, Jesse.
And that's all we have for you right now here.
You are looking at a failure to investigate one. The autopsy report and its supplemental evidence receipts are now public through the OMMI. Read them. Then answer one question in the comments. When a family finds their loved one's bones at a scene the state swore was cleared, what do we call that if not obstruction of the truth? Like this video, share it, subscribe to Trial Theory Unsealed, and turn on notifications. The evidence never stops. Neither will we.